So I had this opportunity as a junior to do a studio in Luxembourg, and then there was a Metz Cathedral project which you could go work on in the summer, and so I did that, and that was like of course all through like that European trip, we're being encouraged to sketch and typical architecture stuff, and as a typical architecture student, I would get resentful about like doing my sketchbook, and which isn't to say that like I didn't appreciate what doing those sketches gave me, but it was I guess it was the randomness with which sketch here, sketch there, that kind of thing. So I didn't quite understand like what I was processing through that sketching. And so then fast forward to the summer program, and now I'm working on just Metz Cathedral, and the professor I was working with, his name is Sergio Sanabria, and he is like meticulous to a fault. And so we were surveying. The point of the project was to do a survey of the cathedral, plus or minus 2 millimeters. Gross dimensions plus or minus 6 millimeters, but fine dimensions plus or minus 2 millimeters. And so like you had to reconstruct all the corners because like after several centuries the corner is worn, and if you don't, like in order to get to that accuracy. So it was crazy. But before you took the measurements, the technique was that you spent a lot of time making very, very detailed sketches, stone by stone sketches. So like you would sit there with a wall and sketch every stone, every deviation in the mortar, and then you would be taking those measurements. But the thing that was so amazing about that process, and like there were always features on the wall too. It wasn't just, you weren't just doing like drawings of masonry, right. But the thing that was so amazing, because Gothic cathedrals have this incredible, you probably felt it like when you can't tell the cathedrals apart, right? Like there's this incredible normalizing kind of impression, this unified impression that a cathedral gives. And it's such an amazing force because when you think about the fact that these buildings were built over several centuries, a lot of times the changes that have occurred, you don't notice them. Like it has this incredible unity to it. That's its own story, but when you sit, in order to do those drawings, you have to sit and look, and through the looking that was required by the sketching, all of a sudden the building came alive and started telling its history, and you would start to notice, this stone is slightly a different color than this stone, and actually you can draw a line, and you can see that difference in stone, and in fact, that also corresponds with this slight change in the sculptural style, or the slight change in the molding profiles. And you would start to see that, no, there was a break in the construction here, or there was, so like the building started to reveal itself in this crazy, crazy way. Like you learn to see through drawing, and then you think, I've now learned to see, so I'm just going to stare at this cathedral and figure out that same kind of knowledge, and you can't do it. The building becomes totally opaque again, and you're sitting there staring, trying to see those same signals that you just were seeing in a different spot. Like you move down and you're like, okay, so where is it? And everything becomes opaque again. So drawing is this way of like opening up and making a building transparent. And so I learned that, and I think that's where I first started, like that's where the questioning first began. And then I actually worked with drawings on my master's thesis project for the MArch, and then I thought, like I had mistakenly understood my focus at that point as the Gothic period. I'd always studied Gothic, but what was really interesting to me was the process of drawing and the process of design, and so how drawing fits in with our current methodology and what computers, that's where my project comes from, and how computers are altering that, and what kinds of different practices and different knowledge does this new means of processing building allow. So so that was probably the most formative research moment, was just sitting there looking and drawing stones
and chisel marks.
For this crazy ass professor who wanted plus or minus 2 millimeters.